When Arka returned to the coastal town of Batarengat after years in the city, he expected dust and silence. Instead, he found a house that still breathed, wooden shutters sighing in the wind, tamarind leaves tapping the old windows, the salt-thick air carrying a faint perfume of telon oil and jasmine. His grandmother, Sari, had passed away 2 weeks earlier. She left him the house, a wooden box sealed with red string, and a simple instruction in her will. "Take care of my chair." He thought she meant the teak rocking chair by the veranda, until he unlocked the bedroom beside the kitchen and saw it. A steel wheelchair with leather armrests polished by decades of careful hands. A batik cloth was folded on its seat like an offering. A framed photo of Grandma Sari beside a little girl sat on the nightstand. The girl, hair clipped with plastic butterfly barrettes, could have been his mother, but the year on the frame didn't fit. 1998. His mother would have been long grown by then. "Welcome home," said Lestari, the neighbor who'd watched the house while the funeral matters were handled. She was a nurse at the district clinic, late 20s, eyes with a quiet steadiness that calmed the room. "We kept the place clean." She loved that chair. Said it helped her listen. "Listen to what?" Arka asked. "To footsteps you can't hear," Lestari said gently. She was a storyteller. That first night, the house was friendly but unfamiliar. Crickets knit the air together. Pipes murmured. The tamarind tapped. Sleep arrived, but it was thin and restless. At 2:13 a.m., Arka woke to a hum. Soft, rubber on wood, like a wheel easing forward on polished floorboards. He sat up. The bedroom door was open a sliver. Down the hall, the wheelchair glowed faintly, bathed in moonlight. It was not where he'd left it. Earlier, he'd pushed it against the wardrobe. Now it stood by the doorway, as if waiting. "Lestari," he whispered, though he knew the house was locked and she lived next door. The chair gleamed. The batik cloth rustled though there was no breeze. He stepped closer, phone flashlight held low so the beam wouldn't blind him. The chair seemed ordinary in plain light. Scratches on the axle, a dent on the right footplate, the name "Sorry" etched under the arm. Yet the air around it felt different, like the moment before a storm when the world stands still. He touched the push handle. Cold. Solid. And then, with a soft squeak, the chair rolled backward. Just an inch. Then another. It stopped by itself. Adrenaline raced across his skin. "Okay," he said to the empty hallway. "You're on wheels. Floors are uneven, that's all." But the floors were level. He had checked them when he packed away the hospital bed. He didn't sleep much after that. Dawn stained the sky pale orange. At 7, he brewed tea. At 8, Lestari arrived with a paper bag of warm lontong saya. She listened while he described the chair's small midnight drift with a calm that felt like kindness and also like experience. "Some things move when they miss their routine," she said. "Your grandmother rolled to the window every night at 2 and back again before 3. Maybe the chair remembers." "Chairs don't remember." "People do," Lestari said. "And sometimes the things that hold our weight hold our wishes too." They ate, and the house felt less strange, as if Lestari's presence taught the walls to breathe differently. After breakfast, Arka untied the red string around the wooden box his grandmother left him. Inside lay a faded children's book with a cardstock cover, edges rounded by small hands. The title was handwritten in careful letters. "Ronnie and the Window." A pressed hibiscus flower fell from between the pages. Beneath the book was a cassette tape labeled Ronnie, July, and an old Walkman with fresh batteries taped to it. He pressed play. A child's voice, clear, bright, slightly breathless, filled the kitchen. "Grandma, can I go to the window again tonight?" Grandma Sari's voice answered, warm and textured, the voice everyone recognized from storytelling nights. "Only if you wait for me, Ronnie. The floor is slippery near the pot of ferns." Lestari glanced at the photo on the nightstand. Sorry and the butterfly barrette girl. "Who is Ronnie?" she asked. "I don't know," Arka said. But she wanted the window too. That afternoon, he opened the bedroom curtains. The wheelchair faced the window now, its batik cloth folded neatly. On impulse, he pushed it forward until the footplates touched the sill. Outside, the tamarind tree swayed over the fence, and the sea glittered far beyond. He stood behind the chair and felt, for a breath, like a caretaker on duty. The moment surprised him with tenderness. Something in the posture, the pushing, the silent companionship of wheels and light. He remembered visiting his grandmother in the hospital during his last semester of college. How she had asked about the city lights and if the trains still sang. "You can listen," he said softly, though he didn't know to whom. That night, the chair moved again. Longer, steadier. At 2:13, the batik cloth brushed the doorframe as the wheels pivoted toward the kitchen. Arka followed without turning on lights, letting moonshine do the work. The chair glided to the fridge, then to the sink, then paused, waiting. It felt like a map traced by memory. Water, milk, sugar, carefully measured and poured. "Tea," he whispered. "You always made tea at night." Just then, the radio on the shelf flickered, though it had no batteries. From its quiet mouth, a thin whisper threaded the air, like a breath skating across glass. "Grandma," the air said, or else it was the house saying it to itself. "Can we go to the window?" The chair turned toward the hallway again. It rolled back to the bedroom, to the window, to the tamarind's slow dance. Arka stood behind the wheelchair, a hand hovering over the push handle but not touching. He felt like an intruder and a guardian both. The moonlight layered the floor in silver. And for the first time since the funeral, the house felt full. Not haunted exactly, but inhabited by an unfinished promise. "Okay," he said to whoever was listening. "We'll go to the window." The chair stilled. Somewhere, near or far or inside his own chest, a small sigh settled, as if a child had finally sat down after a long, patient wait. Outside, waves stitched themselves to shore. Inside, the night learned a new routine. 2 o'clock, wheels. 3 o'clock, window. And in between, questions blooming like the tamarind leaves. Who was Ronnie? Why did Grandma Sorry ask him to care for the chair? And why did the wheelchair move with such gentle certainty, as if guided by a pair of hands that had learned to love the world from the height of a seat and the rhythm of 2 small wheels? In the morning, Arka found a faint mark on the windowsill, the ghost of a butterfly hair clip pressed into old paint. It hadn't been there yesterday. He looked at the photo again. The child's smile was bright as a new coin. The date still read 1998. And beneath the frame, hidden by a fold of lace, a small paper label flaked loose. He turned it over. In his grandmother's tidy script, 3 words waited like a door slightly ajar. "Wait for Ronnie." For 3 nights, the wheelchair traced the same path. Hallway, fridge, kettle, window, until the routine felt like a lullaby. Arka began to anticipate the sounds, the gentle squeak, the pause before the pivot, the soft thud of the footplate meeting the sill. He would rise, follow, and stand at the window with a chair, watching a town that slept as if nothing odd ever happened. In the daytime, he searched the house for more clues. He found them in details. A notebook under the mattress filled with Grandma's careful entries. June 3rd. Ronnie laughed at the palangi after the rain. Must fix the loose screw on left wheel. June 28th. She asked why stars look like salt thrown on a blue plate. July 11th. Doctor says patience. We count tamarind leaves together. The dates were recent, the ink not yet faded. The last entry, 3 months before Grandma's passing, read, "Window helps. Night wind calms. She hums, Nina Bobo off-key." But who is she? Arka asked the empty room. The district clinic kept records in paper folders and neat digital files. Lestari had access to both. She searched during her lunch break and came back with a thin result that felt heavier than it looked. A patient file with the initials RR, admitted short-term for respiratory therapy. No photo, but a handwritten consent form in an adult's round letters. Guardian, sorry W. She wasn't related by blood, Lestari said. But your grandmother signed as guardian. She must have been caring for the child informally. Foster care. Arka asked. Maybe. Or maybe something simpler and more complicated. Someone left a child with a kind old woman, and the old woman didn't turn away. That afternoon, as the sea breeze dried laundry on the line, Arka listened again to the cassette labeled Ronnie, July. The child's voice told small stories: a moth trapped in a glass, a neighbor's cat with one ear folded, the taste of star fruit when sprinkled with salt. Sometimes Grandma's voice interrupted with laughter. Sometimes there was the soft rattle that accompanies a child's breath when the lungs are stubborn. "Grandma, why do people stand when the bell rings?" the child asked at one point. "Because it means the ice cream man is near," Grandma answered. "No," the child giggled. "At church." "Ah," Grandma said. "Because standing helps us remember that we are alive and grateful." The tape clicked off. Arka sat very still. It wasn't only the words. It was the feeling inside them. The way two people had made a small world with their voices. One perched in a chair that rolled, one leaning close to that chair with the patience of a tide. That night, the routine broke. At 2:13, the wheelchair didn't go to the kitchen. It turned left into the front room, paused by the bookshelf, then rolled to the veranda door and stopped. The bolt slid with a tiny scrape that might have been wind or memory, but the door swung open. The chair crossed the threshold onto the wooden veranda bathed in moonlight. "Not safe," Arka whispered, stepping quickly, a hand hovering behind the chair, ready to catch or guide, not wanting to interfere and yet unable to simply watch. The veranda boards creaked a little. The tamarind leaned in like a curious friend. The wheelchair rolled to the far corner where Grandma had kept a battered radio and a basket of clothes pegs. It stopped in front of an old chest covered in a crocheted runner. Arka knelt, lifted the runner, and tried the chest. Unlocked. Inside, beneath blankets folded with an almost ceremonial neatness, lay envelopes tied with blue thread, and a shoebox decorated with stickers of cartoon rabbits. He opened the shoebox. A dozen butterfly hair clips gleamed up at him, their plastic wings in every color of a patient rainbow. He lifted a clip. The metal hinge clicked. It was the same pattern as the ghost mark on the windowsill. Underneath the clips, a stack of drawings waited. Crayons had left waxy color, a wheelchair with 2 extra-large wheels and a tiny figure sitting tall, a house with a tamarind tree, a window with 6 panes, and a girl holding a kite shaped like a star. Every drawing had the same signature, Ronnie in block letters, sometimes backward. Arka's throat went tight with a feeling he couldn't name. He set the drawings back, closed the box, and broke the blue thread around the envelopes. Inside were letters written by an unfamiliar hand, careful, apologetic, each one starting with, "I'm sorry, Boo sorry." The first explained poverty and travel and the absence of a support system. The second begged for more time. The third promised a return by Eid that didn't happen. The last was unfinished. "I will come before," and then nothing. No signature. No date. He put the letters away carefully, as if they might bruise. "Grandma," he said into the veranda, "what did you promise? And to whom?" The wheelchair rolled back from the chest and returned inside, a slow turn that felt ceremonial. It paused in the front room, facing a corner with a single-framed certificate on the wall. District Award for Community Care, given to Sorry W. The chair stayed there for a long breath, honoring something invisible. Then it pivoted toward the hallway. In the bedroom, it headed not to the window but to the wardrobe. It stopped in front of the mirrored door. In the glass, Arka saw himself reflected beside the chair, a 2-person portrait, one standing with a hand not touching, one waiting with the patience of those who have learned to wait without bitterness. The mirror held a secret too. There, etched faintly in the corner where the silvering had peeled, was a name and a date. Ronnie. 2011. It didn't fit any of the files, any of the timeline he'd assembled. It didn't fit the photo's date either. The threads pulled in different directions, and yet the knot at the center felt real. He sat on the floor beside the chair. Lestari found him there when she stopped by with a thermos of Wedong Jae. "Some legends are man-made," she said, crouching. "Not of ghosts, but of promises. What if the legend here is the promise to keep moving?" Arka asked. What if the chair remembers more than we do? Lestori's eyes warmed with quiet understanding. Then we stand beside it and keep pace. At 3, the chair finally rolled to the window. The moon was thinner than before. The sea whispered a lower song. Arka leaned his head against the cool window frame and listened, not for words or footsteps, but for the simple truth inside certain silences, the kind that say, I am still here. I am still waiting. I am still willing to be gentle. Somewhere inside the house, a floorboard settled. Somewhere inside Arka, a door opened a little wider. He didn't know yet that the next night would bring an answer, and with it, a choice. On the 4th night, rain came like a curtain. Tamarind leaves clung together in a wet whisper. The town's dogs sang a chorus of complaints, and the roof drummed steady. The wheelchair did not move at 2:13. It waited until 2:22, then rolled toward the front door with a purpose that tugged at Arka's nerves. He followed, towel draped around his shoulders, socks damp from a ghostly leak he could not find. At the door, the chair stopped, as if considering. Then, 3 soft knocks on the wood. 1, 2, 3. Arka froze. The house had grown used to small marvels, but a knock at 2:22 was still a knock. He opened the door to a woman in a raincoat. Her hair was pinned back in a practical bun, her face lined by life and travel and long, squinting looks into hard weather. She held a small pink suitcase with a missing wheel. "Boo sorry?" she asked, voice hopeful and tired. Arka's answer stuck in his throat. "I'm her grandson," he managed. "She passed away." The woman swallowed, and her eyes filled with grief that had traveled far to arrive. "I'm late," she said softly, as if confessing to a judge. "My name is Mira. I came for my daughter." Lestori, who had become a habit of the house by now, arrived from next door with a spare umbrella and the instinct to triage. She led Mira inside, dried the suitcase with a rag, and brewed tea. The wheelchair had rolled back a little to make space, and now it stood facing Mira like someone laying eyes on an old friend at a train station. Myra's gaze fell to the chair. Her face crumpled with a tenderness that needed no words. "Hi, Sayong," she whispered to it, voice breaking. "Mama is here." Arka set his cup down with care. "Ronnie is your daughter?" "She was," Mira said. "Is." She hesitated at the verb, then continued. "I left her with Busari when I had to go for work. The plan was 3 months. Life became heavier than my plan. When I came back," she looked at the floor, "I was ashamed of the door. The clinic records," Lestori said gently, "don't have an end date." "I kept sending letters until the money ran out," Mira said. "I tried to call, but the number changed. And then years passed in the way years can pass. I came now because I found the old tape recorder in a box and it felt like a clock started again." The chair rolled forward an inch, that same ceremonial inch Arka knew as the beginning of a routine. Mira put a hand on the push handle like you touch a sleeping child's hair. "Where is Ronnie now?" Arka asked, softly, asking both because he needed to know and because the house seemed to need the answer spoken aloud. Myra's voice lowered to the pitch of a lullaby. "She passed away in this house," she said, peacefully. "At the window. The year is a blur in my head because grief makes fog. But I remember the tamarind leaves and the way Busari said, 'She is not gone. She is light.'" Arka's heart made a careful movement inside his chest. "I didn't see any grave," Mira finished for him. Her ashes were scattered into the sea she loved to watch. That was what she wanted, or what Busari believed she would have wanted. The house exhaled. The rain softened, as if the sky had finished saying something difficult. Mira told them the rest. The day Ronnie arrived in a tiny wheelchair with wheels too stiff, how Sari had adjusted every screw until movement was smooth, the way Ronnie loved to count tamarind leaves and invent stories for each leaf that fell. The nights at the window, when breathing was hard but the wind was kind. "She asked me once," Mira said, eyes shining with a mix of grief and gratitude, "if wheels could keep moving after we stop. I told her maybe promises could. The wheelchair rolled toward the window. Mira stood and followed, her hand firm on the handle now, not shaking. Together, they moved through the hallway with the grace of a dance learned long ago. At the window, Mira eased the chair against the sill and opened the latch. Rain had thinned to a fine mist. The sea wore a silver scarf. "I'm sorry, Sayong," Mira whispered, and the room held the words with impossible gentleness. "I took too long. But I came to say thank you. And I came to keep moving what you loved." A small breeze lifted the batik cloth. The radio on the shelf hummed once, then settled. Arka thought of the pressed hibiscus in the book and the unfinished letter in the envelope. He thought of his grandmother's last instruction to him. "Take care of my chair." He realized it wasn't the furniture she meant. It was the promise bound to it. They stayed at the window until the night blue turned softer. When they finally returned to the kitchen, the chair pivoted toward the cassette player as if it had a memory for the weight of a button. Arka pressed play. Ronnie's voice spilled out, small and clear as a bell drifting across water. "Grandma, if a chair can move by itself, does that mean it wants to go somewhere?" Grandma laughed on the tape. "It means someone loved it so well that the wheels remember the path." Mira covered her mouth with her hand, a sound escaping that was half laugh, half cry. Lestori put a hand on her shoulder. The kitchen smelled like ginger and rain, and the soft salt of human sorrow offered without embarrassment. When the tape ended, no one spoke for a while. Then Mira said, "I came to take the chair, if I may. To keep the promise. To bring it to where I live now, so her niece can sit in it when she plays pretend. So the story can be told again and again without breaking." Arka looked at the chair, then at the house, then at the photo of Sorry and the butterfly barrette girl. He thought of inheritance, not as objects moving from one hand to another, but as feelings given room inside a continued life. "Let's ask the house," he said. Right on cue, the wheelchair rolled backward an inch, then forward again, like a nod. It turned toward Mira with startling clarity and stopped at her feet. "Yes," Lestori said, smiling through tears. "That seems like consent." They laughed, all three, softly. And in the laugh was grief made bearable by purpose. Outside, morning carved a thin line on the horizon. Inside, the legend of a chair that moved on its own became more than a story people tell to frighten children. It became a map for how love travels. In wheels, in hands, in ordinary objects that learn courage by being useful. In the days that followed, the town's rumor mill turned like a water wheel. Neighbors brought rice cakes and memories. Each story a way of placing flowers on an invisible grave. Children climbed the fence to peek at the famous chair. Adults pretended not to believe but asked precise questions. At what time? How far did it move? Did it ever go outside? The old man who fixed umbrellas claimed he'd heard the chair at midnight the year his cat died, but perhaps he was misremembering the wind. Arka and Mira agreed on a gentle plan. They would keep the chair in the house until the 7th night after Myra's arrival, a small tradition borrowed from other rituals and shaped to fit this one. Each evening, they would open the window and let the chair lead. Each night, they would tell Ronnie a story. The first night, Lestori told a story about a nurse who learned to measure time not in minutes but in breaths. The second night, Mira told the true story of a mother who left and the road that eventually returned her. The third night, Arka told a story he invented on the spot. A shy boy who stood behind a chair until he learned that standing behind could be a kind of brave. Between stories, they cooked simple meals. Between meals, they mended small things. A torn curtain, a missing drawer handle, a hinge that clicked. The house warmed under the attention. Grief, given chores, learned to be a neighbor. On the 5th night, the wheelchair changed its path again. It rolled to the front door, paused, and then with a small certain push, crossed the threshold into the rain-polished street. Arka grabbed an umbrella and took the right handle. Mira took the left. Together they guided the chair down Tamarind Lane. The neighbors watched from windows with that special blend of curiosity and respect small towns keep for holy strangeness. The chair stopped by the alley where children played. then by the old banyan tree where a vendor sold grilled corn, then by the clinic where Lestari worked. At each stop, someone stepped out, touched the chair as if greeting a friend, and whispered something small and true. "Thank you. I remember. I'm sorry. Good night." At the clinic door, the chair waited longer, as if measuring a distance only it could see. Lestari came out with her white coat thrown over a floral dress, hair loose, eyes bright with wonder. She placed her palm on the backrest. "We get haunted too," she told the chair. "By the ones we couldn't save. Thank you for haunting us kindly." The chair rolled on. At the end of the lane, it paused where the road sloped toward the sea. The moon was a slice of pearl behind a shawl of cloud. Someone started humming without realizing it. Soon several voices layered the tune of Nina Bobo. It sounded a little off-key, in the way community choirs always do when joy outruns precision. "Is this what legends are for?" Arka asked under his breath. "So a street can learn how to sing?" Mira squeezed his arm. "So a mother can keep a promise." When they returned to the house, the chair pivoted to face the framed certificate again. For the first time, Arka noticed there was a second nail above it, empty, as if something had once hung there. He searched the wardrobe and found a frame without glass. Inside it, under a layer of dust, was a child's drawing of a window but larger than the rest, with a golden sticker star stuck at the center. He cleaned the frame and hung it beside the certificate. The two together looked right, like a sentence completed. That night, when the tape ended, Arka turned off the Walkman and listened to ordinary quiet. No miracles. No hum. Just wind and breath and the click of the kitchen clock. He slept well for the first time since he arrived. He dreamed of a path worn smooth by wheels, not only in his grandmother's house but across other floors. Clinic halls, school corridors, a supermarket aisle, the front step of a church. In the dream, people bent to lift small obstacles from the path, and others knelt to measure heights and build ramps. The world made room. He woke with the conviction that legends are invitations. On the seventh night, they prepared to let the chair go. Mira had arranged transport. A neighbor with a van volunteered. They wrapped the chair in the batik cloth and secured the footplates with soft rope, careful not to bruise the memory of it. Before they lifted it, Arka wheeled it one last time through the house. Kitchen, front room, bedroom, window. The path felt like tracing a signature. "Thank you," he said to the room. "Thank you," Mira said to the chair. "Thank you," Lestari said to the story. They opened the front door. The tamarind made a sound like applause in the breeze. And then the chair did something new. It turned toward the little book on the table, Ronnie and the Window. Arka picked it up, tucked the cassette behind its cover, and placed both on the seat. The chair rolled forward a half-meter, stopped, rolled back again, as if practicing a goodbye. When they lifted it into the van, it was light, not hollow, but somehow easy, as if some of its weight had been shared out into the walls and the floor and the hands that had learned how to hold it. Neighbors gathered, offering farewell the way people do in places where departures are rehearsals for returns. The vendor slipped 2 grilled corns into Myra's bag, for the road. The umbrella fixer saluted. Children made a banner from an old bed sheet. "Thank you," chair painted in shaky letters, a butterfly sticker at the edge. Before they closed the van door, the chair rolled a finger's width forward and bumped Arka's knee. He smiled, placed his palm on the push handle, and said quietly, "You taught me how to stand behind someone and still be seen." Mira nodded, eyes wet. "And you taught me that late is not the same as never." They drove to the small house Mira rented near the market. On the porch, a girl of 5, Ronnie's niece, waited with a paper crown and a seriousness that only small children can wear. She reached for the chair as if meeting a relative. "Is this the story?" she asked. "It is," Mira said. "And now it's ours to tell right." They placed the chair by a window with a view of Bougainvillea. The niece climbed onto the seat, not to sit but to drape a doll's blanket over the armrest. She patted the metal as if comforting it after a long journey. "Does it move by itself?" she asked. "Sometimes," Mira said. when it remembers something beautiful. That evening, the three of them sat on Myra's porch with tea. The niece fell asleep in the chair, head tilted, mouth slightly open. The chair did not move. It held still with the reverence of furniture that understands the job of carrying weight. Arka told his grandmother goodbye by writing her a letter and leaving it under a tamarind root. He thanked her for the house and the instructions, for the kind of love that trains wheels to remember steps, and for the words she never said but taught him anyway: take care of what carries others. He returned to the city 2 weeks later, but he returned differently. He found himself noticing curbs without ramps, doors too narrow, bathrooms that lied with their signs. He sent emails. He joined a small community project that built wooden ramps for neighborhood shops and painted cheerful signs at child height. At night he told the story on a YouTube channel he started not for fame but for company. Gentle legends, small mysteries, FTV soft drama where people learn to be kind. The Legend of the Wheelchair That Moves on Its Own became his first 5-part series. He kept it safe for all ages to hear, tender rather than terrifying. The video description was honest and simple. This is an AI-assisted, fictional retelling inspired by community care. Not for children. The images were cartoon bright and gentle. A window, a tamarind, a chair rolling toward moonlight, a mother's hand, a nurse's smile. Comments arrived like folded notes pushed under a classroom door. My grandmother had a chair like this. We had a teacher who moved heaven for one ramp. I'm late to say thank you to someone who saved my life. I'm going to measure our shop's door tomorrow. On the third episode's upload night, at 2:13 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was a photo from Mira, the chair by her window, the moon a perfect coin in the glass, the niece's paper crown hanging from the handle. Under the photo Mira had typed, "It moved 2 centimeters toward the window. That's all. Enough to say hello." Arka laughed softly alone in his small apartment. He whispered, "Hello," back to a chair in a different town. He turned off the lamp and let the room go gentle. In the dark, he pictured wheels rolling where wheels had never rolled before. Into shops, onto stages, across thresholds that once said no. He pictured hands reaching out to steady, and other hands reaching back to say, "I don't need saving, just space." He slept. In Batarenget, the tamarind made its night music. In a market-side house, a chair waited, ready to keep a promise moving. And somewhere beyond any one house or street or screen, a legend settled into the place where good legends belong. Not in fear, but in the soft muscle of people deciding, again and again, to be gentle with one another.